A year ago, you could get a legal, pharmacy-made version of Ozempic for around $200 a month instead of $1,300. Today, that door is mostly closed, and a much sketchier one has opened in its place. If you've seen off-brand GLP-1, compounded semaglutide, or research peptides advertised for cheap, you need to understand what actually changed in 2026. Because some of these are legitimate, some are legal landmines, and some could put the wrong substance into your body. First, why off-brand GLP-1 became a thing at all. Between 2022 and early 2025, the brand name drugs Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound were in an official FDA shortage. Demand massively outran supply, and under U.S. law, when an approved drug is in short supply, licensed compounding pharmacies are allowed to make their own versions using the same active ingredient. That's compounding. It's legal and regulated when done properly. The price gap was enormous. Compounded semaglutide ran around $200 a month. Brand name Wegovy without insurance, around $1,300. You can see why millions of people switched. Here's the part most videos on this topic haven't caught up with. The shortage is over. The FDA declared the tirzepatide shortage resolved in late 2024 and semaglutide in February 2025. And once a drug is no longer in shortage, the legal basis for mass compounding copies largely disappears. Then it tightened further. In April 2026, the FDA proposed removing semaglutide, tirzepatide, and liraglutide from what's called the 503B bulks list, the mechanism that lets large outsourcing facilities produce these in bulk. The agency's reasoning was blunt. Lower cost and convenience don't count as a clinical need. The result? Compounded semaglutide shipments dropped around 90% year on year. The cheap legal pathway most people used is closing. So is all off-brand GLP-1 now a scam? No, but this is where you need precision. There's still a legal lane. 503A pharmacies. These are state-licensed pharmacies that compound a medication for a specific patient with a valid prescription. Reputable telehealth platforms still operate through these with a real provider consultation and a real prescription. That's a legitimate regulated route, not a scam. The catch is that even this lane is under growing pressure because regulators are watching whether these compounds are just essentially a copy of a now available drug. So the honest summary is legitimate compounded GLP-1 through a licensed pharmacy and a real prescription still exists, but the ground is shifting under it month by month. If you go this route, the prescription and the licensed U.S. pharmacy are the things that separate real from risky. Now, the part this video really exists for. As the legal supply tightened, a much darker market expanded to fill the gap. So-called research peptides. You'll see semaglutide, tirzepatide, even retatrutide sold online, labeled for research use only and not for human consumption. Here's the trick. That label is a legal dodge. The seller uses it to sidestep drug regulations, but the marketing all around it talks about appetite, weight loss, and glucose. In April 2026, the FDA issued a wave of warning letters to exactly these sellers, saying the disclaimer means nothing when your own product page is selling weight loss. The agency is literally quoting sellers' website copy back at them, and the safety data is genuinely alarming. Independent testing of gray market peptides has found products containing anywhere from 90% less active ingredient than claimed to dangerous excesses, plus microbial contamination, heavy metals, and cross-contamination with other substances. Certificates of analysis that don't match what's in the vial. No cold chain guarantees. For semaglutide alone, there have been hundreds of adverse event reports tied to dosing errors. This isn't a cheaper version of the same drug. It's an unknown substance in an unmarked vial. So how do you tell the lanes apart? A few clear signals. Red flags. The words research use only or not for human consumption on something you're meant to inject. No prescription required. No licensed pharmacy is named. Payment by Cash App, crypto, or bank transfer only. Prices that are dramatically below even compounded rates. Shipping from overseas with no U.S. pharmacy in the chain. Any of these, and you're not buying medicine. You're buying a chemistry experiment. Green flags for the legitimate route. A real medical consultation, a valid prescription tied to you specifically, a named U.S. state licensed pharmacy, and a provider you can actually contact. It costs more than the gray market. That difference is what you're paying for safety. Let's talk actual numbers in 2026 because cheap is doing a lot of work in these ads. Brand name options have come down somewhat. Manufacturers now offer direct programs, with some brand terzepatide options in the few $100s a month range rather than the old $1,300. Legitimate compounded options, where still available through licensed pharmacies, sit in between. And the gray market research vials look the cheapest of all, until you price in the risk of getting a contaminated or mislabeled product. The honest framing isn't what's cheapest, it's what's the real cost, including the risk you can't see on the label. So, should you buy off-brand GLP-1? Here's where the research lands. Legitimate compounded GLP-1 through a licensed pharmacy with a real prescription is a real thing, but it's a shrinking and shifting option in 2026. So check the legal status as it stands when you're looking. The research peptide market is not a budget version of the same drug. It's an unregulated gray market the FDA is actively cracking down on, with documented contamination and dosing dangers. And the single most important rule: if there's no prescription and no licensed pharmacy, there's no safety net. We're not telling you what to put in your body. That's between you and a licensed provider. We're telling you how to tell the real lane from the dangerous one, so you don't pay with more than money. We're weighing it up. If this saved you from a sketchy purchase, subscribe. We do the research so you don't pay for the mistake. And because the rules here are changing fast, check the description for the current status and the sources.